Satan has left the White House. Day of days. Patriots. We will have our country back. Trust the plan. Q+. Judy note, many nations were participating in a silent global sting operation headed by Trump and the U.S. military to save children and arrest their global elite pedophile Satan-worshipping perpetrators who had taken over our globe monetary system and bankrupted it. To save the global economy, a global currency reset was planned by the Q team, or White Hats, over 20 years ago and has been in its final stages for weeks, with liquidity expected at any time. Mass arrests of deep staters across the globe have been ongoing since January 2021, with military tribunals held at the U.S. Capitol, Gitmo, and Antarctica. The Chinese Communist Party was about to go down. Putin was getting rid of all Khazarian Rothschild-influenced banks in his country. The U.S., Germany, UK, and Canada had their own continuity of government plans. This Wednesday, December 22nd, Feast Day, Winter Solstice, and Friday, December 24th, High Grand Climax, Demon Revels. Those are the next satanic holidays, and she says just to keep your eyes open because they kidnap teens, they kidnap children, even adults, in the days before these particular satanic holidays. All right. And then she has a list of some important points. Redemption Center personnel have been at work full-time since Thursday, December 16th. Whales remain in position in Reno and in Zurich. Some historical bondholders have been paid 1% of their bonds. Iraq has confirmed that all foreign combat forces have been removed. That's important so that they could go ahead with Jassara. The NHL has rescheduled games set between Monday, December 20th to the 23rd. That's interesting. Why would they do that? Cue the Storm Rider. It's all happening and connecting to great events. In the end, deep state in all countries will be arrested. Z is getting ready to pull the switch on the CCP. Remember, Z is part of the alliance. And even though it appears like he's part of the CCP, he's not. Maybe he's playing both sides, I don't know. But as far as I'm concerned, he's in charge. And he's a white hat. Putin is getting rid of all the Khazarian Rothschild influence banks in his country. Trump and the military were getting ready for 11.3. That's from the Law of War Manual. UK, Canada were inside their own continuity of government plans. Many head nations were inside a silent military operation. The works were connected. BlackRock owns almost everything and controls every industry. This is a big problem. And apparently it's the Evergrande fiasco is going to be affecting BlackRock, and that's going to bring everything down. Because BlackRock, like she said, is connected to everything. Here's the...
Dear fellow human, I think by now you're sensing that something does not seem right. But I also think that poorly argumented conspiracy theories have caused you to stay far from the fear-mongering media and conspiracy theorists alike. But please listen, because as you are watching, millions fall into poverty because of the corona measures of the past year. Even if the greatest economic crisis in history has not affected you yet, it will only be a matter of time until the rippling effects will hit you as well. This is not fear-mongering, but it's a harsh reality. I also think we might mitigate the damage and may even do better provided we are informed correctly about our situation. This is why I would like to show you a few facts you can easily check, facts that are of crucial importance. Less than a handful of big corporations dominate every aspect of our lives. That may seem exaggerated, but from the breakfast we eat to the mattress we sleep on and everything we wear and consume in between is largely dependent on these corporations. Those are huge investment companies that determine the course of money flow. They are the main characters of the play that we are witnessing. I know your time is valuable, so I summarized the most important data. How does it work? Let's take PepsiCo as an example. It is the parent company of many soda companies and snack companies. The so-called competitive brands are from factories from a few corporations who monopolize the entire industry. In the packaged food industry, there are a few big companies, like Unilever, the Coca-Cola Company, Mondelez, and Nestle. In the picture you see that most brands in the food industry belong to one of these corporations. The big companies are on the stock market and have the big shareholders in the board of directors. On sources like Yahoo Finance, we can see detailed company info, such as who the biggest shareholders actually are. Let's take PepsiCo again as an example. We see about 72% of stock is owned by no less than 3,155 institutional investors. These are investment companies, investment funds, insurance companies, banks, and in some cases, governments. Who are the biggest institutional investors of PepsiCo? As you can see, only 10 of the investors own together nearly 1/3 of the stock. The top 10 of investors together amount to a value of $59 billion. But out of those 10, only 3 own more stock than the other 7. Let's remember them and look up who owns the most stocks of the Coca-Cola Company, the biggest competitor of Pepsi. The biggest lump of stock is again owned by institutional investors. Let's look at the top 10 and start at the bottom 6 of them. 4 of these institutional investors we also saw at the bottom 6 of PepsiCo. These are Northern Trust, JP Morgan Chase, 𝐗𝐿 Capital Management, and Wellington Management. They are BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street. These are the world's biggest investment firms. So PepsiCo and Coca-Cola are not a myriad of brand names like Unilever, Mondelez, and Nestlé are from the same small group of investors. But it's not only in the food industry that their names come up. Let's find out on Wikipedia which are the biggest tech companies. Facebook is the owner of WhatsApp and Instagram. Together with Twitter, they form the most popular social media platforms. Alphabet is the parent of all Google companies like YouTube and Gmail. They are also the biggest investor in Android, one of the 2 operating systems for nearly all smartphones and tablets. The other operating nearly all computers, tablets, and smartphones in the world. Let's see who are the biggest shareholders of these companies. Take Facebook. We see that 80% of the stock is owned by institutional investors. These are the same names that came up in the food industry. The same investors are in the top 3. Next is Twitter. It forms with Facebook and Instagram the top 3. Surprisingly, this company is in the hands of the same investors as well. We see them again with Apple and even with their biggest competitor, Microsoft. Also, if we look at other big companies in the tech industry that develop and make our computers, TVs, phones, and home appliances, we see the same big investors that together own the majority of the stock. It's true for all industries, I'm not exaggerating. This company owns RTL, that owns 45 television stations and 32 radio stations in 11 countries. But Bertelsmann is also co-owner of the world's biggest book publisher, Penguin, to connect all industries in the world to serve their interests. This is done through the World Economic Forum, among others, a very important organization. Every year in Davos, the CEOs of big corporations meet national leaders, politicians, and other influential parties like UNICEF and Greenpeace. In the supervisory board of the WEF is former President Al Gore, our Minister Kaag, 𝐓𝐿𝐃𝐀𝐘'𝐒, chairman of the Royal Dutch State Mines, and the commissioner of DNB, the Dutch bank. Christine Lagarde, chairwoman of the European Central Bank. Also politician Fred Grapperhaus' son works for the WEF. Wikipedia says that the annual fee for members is €X. But over half of her budget comes from partners who pay the cost for politicians who otherwise could not afford membership. Wikipedia also mentions this. According to critics, the WEF is for rich businesses to do business with other businesses or with politicians. For most members, the WEF would support personal gain instead of being a means to solve the world's problems. Why would there be many world problems if the industry leaders, bankers, and politicians from 1971 onwards have gathered every year to solve the world's problems? Isn't it illogical that after 50 years of meetings between environmentalists and the CEOs of the most polluting companies, nature is gradually doing worse, not better? That those critics are right is clear when we look at the main partners that together make up more than half of the budget of the WEF. Because these are BlackRock, the Open Society Foundation, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and many big companies from which Vanguard and BlackRock own the stocks. Chairman and founder of the WEF is Klaus Schwab, a Swiss professor and businessman. In his book The Great Reset, he writes about the plans of his organization. He calls it Building Back Better. The slogan is now on the lips of all globalist politicians in the world.
At the moment, the crucial moment, to rebuild the future, to reset our policies.
We also want to work together and guide the response to build back better.
To build back a better world.
But also to build back better.
Our old society must switch to a new one, says Schwab. And the WEF published a video recently to make clear that by 2030 we will own nothing, but we will be happy. The media wants us to believe that this is a conspiracy theory, yet it has been talked about by leaders for decades. George Bush Sr., Bill Clinton and Nelson Mandela, but also world-famous philanthropists like Cecil Rhodes, David Rockefeller, Henry Kissinger, and even George Soros.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
After 1989, President Bush said, and it's a phrase that I often use myself, that we needed a new world order.
The affirmative task we have now is to actually create a new world order.
In 2015, for controversial Agenda 2030. It is almost identical to the Great Reset of Klaus Schwab. The UN wants to make sure, as does Schwab, that in 2030 poverty, hunger, pollution and disease no longer plague the earth. Sounds nice, but wait till you read the small print. The plan is that Agenda 2030 will be paid by us, the citizens. Just like they ask of us now to give away our rights for public health, they will ask us to give away our wealth to battle poverty. These are no conspiracy theories. It is on their official website. It comes down to this. The UN wants taxes from Western countries to be split by the mega corporations of the elite to create a brand new society. It's a new infrastructure because fossil fuels are gone in 2030. For this project, the UN says we need a world government, namely the UN itself. It is worrisome that the WEF and the UN openly admit that pandemics and other catastrophes can be used to reshape society. We must not think lightly about this and do thorough research. Again, a new world order to save us. Is it surprising when I tell you that this gathering, Event 201, was organized by the World Economic Forum, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and the Johns Hopkins Institute? This is no conspiracy theory. Look on the official website of Event 201. At this point, you may not be surprised anymore that the Robert Koch Institute, just like any other public institute, is closely connected to Gates' WHO, and that it created a similar simulation in 2012. In this simulation, the starting point was a food market in Southeast Asia. I won't go into the details, look it up on the website of the German government. Lastly, I would like to show you part of a talk of virologist Mark van Ranst, which he held on January 22nd, 2019 in Chatham House. The Chatham House organization is financed by the elite corporations and also by the Gates Foundation. This is an important non-profit in London where important figures gather to talk about the world's problems. The Chatham House Prize was given to Hillary Clinton, Melinda Gates, and John Kerry. During the talk, our own Ab Oosterhuis is in the front row. Van Ranst explains how he misled the people during the swine flu. He triggered fear by death numbers without context and media manipulation.
I'll tell you about my experience as being the crisis manager, the flu commissioner for Belgium and highlighting the communication aspects there. And then you have one opportunity to do it right. I mean, day one is so important. In day one, you start your communication with the press, with the people, and you have to do it right. I mean, you have to go for one voice, one message. In Belgium, they chose to appoint a non-politician to do that. I mean, I have no party affiliations, and that makes things a little bit, at that time at least, a little bit easier, because you're not attacked politically, majority, minority. That doesn't come into play, and that was a huge advantage. The second advantage is that you can play in Brussels the complete naive guy and get a lot more done than you would otherwise be able to do. You have to be omnipresent that first day or the first days, so that you attract the media attention. You make an agreement with them that you will tell them all, and if they call, you will pick up the phone. When you do that, then you can profit from these early days to get complete carpet coverage of the field, and they're not going to search for alternative voices there. And if you do that, that makes things a lot easier. And then you have to say, okay, well, we will have H1N1 deaths. Of course, that would be unavoidable. I used there Sir Donaldson's quote, where he said that in UK, by the peak of the epidemic,
Big BlackRock and Big Vanguard do not benefit from borders, import taxes, and real diversity. Only by means of fear and media manipulation can they contain it. Nothing sells better than fear is the slogan of virologists like Van Ranst. You're going to be surprised, like I was, that we have often been warned.
I think we're being run by maniacs. If anybody can put on paper what our government and the American government, etc., and the Russian, China...
Because it had some great information, and it's important to put things into a globalist perspective. A lot of people don't think that way, and they don't see it. But that's part of, being able to understand what's going on, is to see how the globalists have set the world up so that they can bring about their Agenda 30 and their New World Order. So over time, these wealthy elites, families that have, owned the central banks and so forth, have managed to shield themselves and their names from society, but still own all these different corporations, which you think compete with each other, but they don't, as you saw in some of these charts that she was showing. And in that, we basically are in what's called a corporocracy, where corporations are running the show, and we just don't realize it. And like she said, behind all of these corporations is the biggest shareholders are BlackRock and Vanguard. See, it funnels down to the same people. And it's no accident they did this event 201, and you heard that guy laughing at us, because we were so easily manipulated by the media with fear and numbers of fatality. Yeah, it's so funny, but that's how they are. They're psychopaths. They don't value life. To them, we are just, slaves, chattel, whatever you want to call it. They're all about how to manipulate us to get us to do what they want. And once you see all those connections, and it all funnels down into the same group of people, and they meet at that World Economic Forum, and bring their plans together. They do these simulations so they can best deceive the public. And here we are. You've heard about these soccer players in Europe that have been just collapsing on the field. And it's so easy to see. So, I did not play the full video, but I highly recommend watching something like that, going back into this document and watching the full thing. It really puts things in perspective. A lot of people cannot accept what's happening because they don't understand those facts. They don't see how it works. And until they can see how things work, how the globalists are doing it, they're not going to buy into any of these smaller stuff. So really, really good video for people just waking up. Okay, moving on. Russia and China's